Somewhere between pain and pleasure, there lies a path leading to the end of all suffering, a path we can all follow if we dare to face life's deepest questions. This path wasn't laid by a supernatural being, but by an ordinary man. Today we'll tell the story of a man who gave up everything we might dream of to seek the end of suffering for all beings. In the profound silence of introspection, he discovered truths that continue to transform lives to this day. Today's video is about Buddha Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama, and his greatest teaching. More than 2,500 years ago, in the kingdom of Kapilavastu, a boy was born, surrounded by prophecies and mysteries. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. According to the wise seers, he would either become a great king or a spiritual master who would change the destiny of humanity. His father, King Suddhodana, feared losing his son to a life of renunciation and decided to shield him from all suffering by surrounding him with comfort and pleasure. Siddhartha grew up in a world where pain was a well-kept secret. In palaces filled with riches, endless feasts, and grand celebrations, he believed happiness was his natural destiny. He married young to Yashodhara, a woman whose beauty and virtue captivated everyone. To the outside world, his life seemed perfect. Yet something troubled his heart. He sensed that beyond the golden walls of his palace, there was a greater truth that no one dared to reveal. For 29 years, Siddhartha Gautama lived surrounded by luxury, isolated from any suffering. Yet, an unease grew within him, a feeling that something was missing, an invisible truth present in everything. One day he asked his charioteer, Channa, to take him beyond the golden walls. What he saw would change his life forever. As they journeyed through the bustling streets, Siddhartha noticed a man with wrinkled skin, white hair, and a stooped posture. Intrigued, he asked Channa, "What has happened to this man? Why does he no longer have the strength of youth?" Channa replied, "He is old, my lord. Everyone ages, and the body loses its vitality over time." Those words struck Siddhartha like a blow. He had never considered that time could transform a youthful, healthy body into something so fragile. With his mind reeling, he asked himself, "Is this fate unavoidable for all?" On another outing, he saw a sick man struggling to breathe, his eyes clouded with suffering. Again, Siddhartha asked Channa, "What is wrong with this man?" Channa replied, "He is sick, my lord. Illness strikes everyone at any moment without warning." Siddhartha felt a pang in his heart. Until that moment, he believed health was natural and eternal. But now he understood that the body was vulnerable, subject to pain and limitations beyond our control. On yet another outing, Siddhartha witnessed something even more disturbing. A corpse was being carried to its cremation, surrounded by inconsolable mourners. He asked, "What has happened to this man?" Channa, with a somber expression, replied, "He has died, my lord. Death is the destiny of all. No one escapes it." The word death echoed in Siddhartha's mind like thunder. He looked at the faces around him, men, women, children, and realized that all were inevitably walking toward the same end. If death is certain, what is the purpose of all this? He wondered. Amidst all this suffering, something caught his attention. A man with a shaved head and simple robes walked slowly. Unlike those around him, he seemed serene, untroubled, as if he carried a secret no one else knew. Siddhartha asked, "Who is he?" Channa replied, "That man is a renunciate. He has abandoned worldly concerns and seeks inner peace." In that monk, Siddhartha saw a glimpse of something that seemed impossible in the world he knew: tranquility amidst chaos, freedom amidst suffering. These 4 encounters opened Siddhartha's eyes to the reality of existence. Life is impermanent, marked by aging, illness, and death. Suffering seems inevitable. But there is something more, a peace that transcends suffering, glimpsed in the monk. These experiences awakened in him a singular question. Is there a way to escape suffering? Thus the seed of enlightenment was planted. Siddhartha decided to begin his journey in search of the truth. When he crossed the palace gates to leave, he didn't just abandon luxury and security. He left behind the love of his wife, Yashodhara, and his innocent newborn son, Rahula. Before departing, he observed them sleeping silently. How can I be a good father or husband while suffering permeates every aspect of existence? Would it not be better to find a way to liberate everyone? His heart was heavy. Though his decision to leave was an act of compassion for the world, it was also marked by profound renunciation, the weight of which he would carry throughout his journey. Upon leaving the palace, Siddhartha Gautama was not a man without direction. He knew that to understand suffering and its liberation, he needed to learn from those who had already devoted their lives to the spiritual quest. This is how he came to Alara Kalama, a renowned master who taught the profound mysteries of meditation and the pathways to transcend the material world. Alara Kalama was known for guiding his disciples to the highest meditative states, known as jhanas. He taught that entering these states allowed the mind to access realities beyond ordinary human experience, temporarily freeing itself from suffering and impermanence. With his innate determination and exceptional ability, Siddhartha quickly mastered Alara's teachings. He attained the state of nothingness, where all thoughts, sensations, and even the sense of self disappeared, leaving only a silent void. Despite reaching this elevated state, Siddhartha felt it was not the answer he sought. The void was not permanent, and upon returning from this meditative state, suffering still lingered. He went to Alara and asked, "Is this the end of the journey? Is this state the true liberation?" Alara replied, "There is nothing beyond this. This is the pinnacle of what we can achieve." But Siddhartha was not satisfied. Something within him insisted that true liberation must be enduring and unshakable. He thanked his master and continued his journey, determined to explore the limits of the mind and existence. The next stage of his search led him to Uddaka Ramaputta, another renowned master who explored even subtler meditative states. Under his guidance, Siddhartha achieved the state of neither perception nor non-perception, a level where the mind rests on the boundary between existence and non-existence. In this state, all duality disappears. There is no pain or pleasure, no subject or object, only an almost undefinable presence, beyond language and logic. Once again, Siddhartha demonstrated exceptional ability, quickly reaching what few disciples could. But as before, upon returning from these states, he realized that suffering remained an inevitable constant in human existence. "Master, this state is profound, but it is not the end. It does not answer the fundamental question, why do we suffer, and how can we be free from suffering forever?" Uddaka replied calmly, "This is the peak of the practice. There is nothing beyond this." Siddhartha felt grateful but also disheartened. He realized that while these masters had explored the mind's furthest limits, they were still bound by the same limitations he sought to transcend. The teachings of Alara and Uddaka were fundamental to Siddhartha, but not as final answers. They showed him that the human mind had extraordinary potential, capable of reaching unimaginable states of consciousness. However, these states were temporary, and suffering always returned. Siddhartha realized that paths focusing solely on the mind were insufficient. He concluded that he would need to go beyond what any master of his time had achieved. His journey would no longer be guided by others, but by the deep intuition that the answer lay within, waiting to be discovered. The masters had brought him to the threshold of enlightenment, but crossing to the other side would be a journey he had to undertake alone. After leaving the masters and their meditative practices behind, Siddhartha Gautama decided that the answer to suffering must lie in a more rigorous path, one that challenged the body's limits. He found a group of ascetics who believed in bodily mortification as the means to achieve liberation. To them, the body was an enemy, a prison that needed to be weakened and transcended. In his relentless quest for truth, Siddhartha immersed himself deeply in this philosophy. Over the following years, he subjected his body to extreme deprivations, believing that by denying all physical needs, his mind would rise beyond suffering. Siddhartha's days were a succession of trials. He fasted for long periods, consuming so little that his body became a walking skeleton. His bones were visible beneath his skin, and his strength slowly faded. He experimented with breathing techniques that brought him to unbearable states of pain and near unconsciousness. The nights were even more severe. He slept in the open, enduring biting cold without protection, believing that each discomfort was a step toward liberation. He avoided any contact with pleasure, rejecting even the shade of trees, preferring to expose himself to the scorching sun for hours. Each day, he moved further from the vitality that once defined him as a prince. Yet rather than despair, he saw this as progress, the symbolic death of his former self, a complete renunciation of the material world. The other ascetics practicing alongside Siddhartha revered him as an example of dedication. They said his discipline was unmatched, that he was on the brink of enlightenment. However, Siddhartha began to notice something unsettling. Though he had mastered the art of enduring physical suffering, his mind had not yet found peace. One day, as he teetered on the edge of physical collapse, a distant sound reached his ears. It was a soft, melodious sound, floating over the waters of a nearby river. With the little energy he had left, Siddhartha lifted his eyes toward the sound, as if his soul was drawn to that unexpected moment of beauty. A musician on a boat was tuning the strings of a simple lute. The melody was gentle, but what captivated Siddhartha was the musician's voice explaining to an apprentice beside him, "If the string is too tight, it will break. If it is too loose, it will not produce sound. The secret is balance, not too tense, not too slack." These simple words were like lightning in the darkness of Siddhartha's mind. He realized that his entire life had been marked by extremes. In the palace, he had lived in total indulgence, surrounded by pleasures. In the ascetic path, he had embraced absolute denial, punishing his body as if it held the key to liberation. Now there, between the sound of the lute and the steady flow of the river, the truth revealed itself clearly and simply. Balance was the answer. Life, like the string of a lute, required enough tension to vibrate, but not so much that it broke. The body was not something to be denied or destroyed, but a precious tool for spiritual practice. Extreme suffering was no more noble than excessive pleasure. Both were distractions, leading away from the truth. He realized that the path he sought was not in extremes, but in the middle way, a harmony between body, mind, and spirit. This moment, simple yet profound, changed the course of his journey. The next morning, by the banks of the Niranjana River, when a simple woman named Sujata found Siddhartha in his weakened state and offered him a bowl of milk and rice, he accepted the food. This act was seen by his fellow ascetics as a betrayal of their practice. With Sujata's help, Siddhartha abandoned extreme asceticism. He thanked the other ascetics for their companionship, but explained that he could no longer follow the same path. They criticized and abandoned him, believing he had given up on his quest. But Siddhartha knew he was closer to the truth than ever before. Siddhartha knew that his search could no longer be external, nor could it depend on ascetic practices or rituals. He did not need more teachers or more teachings. The path of wisdom could only be found within himself. So, he sat under the Bodhi tree, and with profound determination, he declared to the universe that he would not rise from that position until he had attained enlightenment, until he had found the answer to human suffering. He was not in a hurry, but he also knew that this moment would be definitive. His journey would not be complete until he fully understood, beyond any doubt, the true nature of reality. At the most critical moment, Siddhartha's mind was challenged by Mara, the demon of illusion. Mara was not a physical entity, but the manifestation of forces that try to divert humans from the path of truth. He tried everything to disturb Siddhartha's meditation. He sent his daughters, the personifications of desire and pleasure, to seduce him with lust and temptations. He brought armies of demons to frighten him, and he even tried to attack him with the forces of fear. But Siddhartha remained immune to it all. He did not allow himself to be distracted by illusions, because he knew they were mere shadows of true reality. He was not influenced by bodily pleasures or the fears of the mind. Mara's temptations, like the shadows of the day, disappeared when he faced them directly, without fear or desire. By confronting Mara without succumbing to his temptations, Siddhartha demonstrated that he had transcended worldly desires and the distractions of the ego. Mara, powerless, finally withdrew, realizing that he could no longer disturb the one who had attained inner peace. Some say that after 49 days of deep meditation, Siddhartha finally experienced what he had been seeking for years. Others say he meditated for 7 days and 7 nights. The fact is that at the age of 35, Siddhartha Gautama achieved total enlightenment. He not only understood the nature of life and suffering, but more importantly, grasped the reason for suffering and the path to its transcendence. The first great realization that unfolded before Siddhartha was the impermanence, anicca, of all things. He saw that, just as the moon rises and sets, just as the sun rises and falls, everything that exists is subject to constant change. No one is immune to the flow of time. Nothing remains the same, not even for an instant. He realized that human suffering arises from attachment to what is ephemeral. We want things to remain as they are: youth, love, health, wealth, friendships. But like the seasons, everything changes. The human mind, ignorant of the impermanent nature of life, suffers intensely from these changes. Resistance to change, the desire to control what cannot be controlled, is what creates suffering. Siddhartha saw with absolute clarity that the human mind is the cause of suffering. When it clings to what is transitory, it creates an illusion of permanence. When we identify with something, our bodies, possessions, relationships, or even ideas, we make them fixed, unchanging. But the reality is that everything is transitory, everything passes, and nothing escapes the law of change. The second great realization was the reality of suffering, dukkha. Siddhartha realized that suffering permeates all aspects of life. It is not something to be avoided or overcome with effort, but a fundamental characteristic of human experience. Suffering is not limited to physical pain or loss, but also includes the frustrations and emotional discomforts that everyone faces. He saw that suffering arises from desire, tanha, the desire for more pleasure, more possessions, more security, more control. But the moment we cling to these things, and they inevitably change or disappear, suffering manifests. This happens because we are deeply conditioned to believe that pleasure and stability are permanent, that what we have now is something eternal. Siddhartha understood that it is not the existence of suffering that causes us pain, but our reaction to suffering. Instead of accepting it as a natural part of life, we try to flee from it, hide it, or worse, deny its existence. Suffering then becomes an endless cycle, a prison created by our own minds. The third great realization that was revealed to Siddhartha was the cause of suffering, attachment. He saw that suffering does not arise solely from desire, but also from attachment. Desire is the root of attachment. We want to keep what we have, cling to pleasure, and avoid pain. When we cannot hold on to what we desire, or when what we have disappears, we feel powerless and suffer. Attachment creates the illusion that we need things and people to be complete. Siddhartha understood that when the mind clings to objects, relationships, or even ideas, it becomes a slave to its own constructions. Attachment to self and mine creates a fixed identity, separate from the natural flow of life, and this is the source of all our anguish. He realized that the true path to freedom does not lie in avoiding suffering or suppressing desires, but in releasing attachment. By letting go of control, by opening our hands and allowing things to flow, suffering loses its power over us. The final great realization of Siddhartha was the cessation of suffering, nirodha. He saw that while suffering is inevitable in life, there is also a path to its cessation. This path is not an escape from reality, but a conscious detachment and an internal transformation in how we interact with the world. Liberation from suffering does not mean the absence of pain or the denial of impermanence, but a deep acceptance of how things are. When one abandons attachment, the need for control, and the insatiable desire to possess, suffering dissolves. The mind experiences inner peace, a peace that does not depend on external circumstances, but is an inherent quality of our true nature. After achieving enlightenment, Siddhartha Gautama did not retreat to a distant sanctuary, as many might expect from someone who reached such a sublime state of realization. On the contrary, he understood that his awakening experience was not something to be kept secret. He knew that true wisdom is fully revealed when shared, when applied to the suffering of others, even if few would understand what he had to say. Therefore, his mission was just beginning. He had found the universal truth, but now he had to convey it to others in a way that was accessible, practical, and transformative. In his heart, he knew that what he had discovered was the key to liberating all human beings from the endless cycle of suffering and ignorance. In his first words to his initial disciples, the ascetics who had previously rejected him, Buddha explained the teaching he had discovered with such clarity and simplicity. It is neither through mortification of the body, nor through the pursuit of pleasures that truth is found. The path to liberation lies in the renunciation of attachment, in the freedom of the mind, in mindfulness, and in the practice of compassion. From that moment he began sharing his greatest teaching, the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the core of Buddha's teachings. These truths are not distant theories or philosophies, but practical insights into the nature of human existence, how we deal with suffering, and how we can overcome it. The first noble truth Buddha revealed was the truth of suffering, or dukkha. Unlike an idealistic view of life, Buddha recognized and taught that suffering is an inevitable part of the human condition. However, suffering should not be seen merely as physical pain or loss, but as a broader experience. Dukkha encompasses the frustrations and dissatisfactions of daily life, the emptiness we feel in our constant search for something to fulfill us, and even the uncertainty and transient nature of existence itself. Buddha was very clear in stating that suffering is not limited to the obvious pain we experience in moments of distress, but also includes a deeper suffering that permeates our incessant pursuit of pleasure, success, security, and control. Every unmet desire, every broken attachment, every frustrated expectation is a form of suffering. He teaches us that suffering is not something foreign to our lives, but a fundamental characteristic of it. Accepting this truth is the first step to freeing ourselves from suffering, for only when we acknowledge our pain, whether obvious or hidden, can we begin to address it. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering, known as samudaya. Buddha revealed to us that suffering has an origin, and that origin is desire, the ceaseless craving for pleasure, possessions, control, and even the desire to exist. This desire, in turn, is fueled by attachment. The human mind is constantly driven by a deep desire for satisfaction. When we have something, we want more. When we achieve something, we want to keep it. When something escapes us, we feel frustration and sadness. This cycle of desire and attachment creates a prison we often don't even realize we're part of. Moreover, Buddha teaches us that desire is not only material, but also mental. We seek approval, security, recognition, and identity in our thoughts and emotions. This incessant search for something more to give us a sense of completeness leads us to continuous suffering, because what we seek is never enough to fill the existential void. In his wisdom, Buddha stated that this vicious cycle of desire is the true cause of human suffering. The third noble truth is the cessation of suffering, or nirodha. Buddha revealed to us that while suffering is an inherent feature of life, it is possible to interrupt this cycle. If suffering has a cause, desire, then by eradicating the cause, suffering can be dissolved. The cessation of suffering is not a promise to completely eliminate all difficulties or challenges in life, but is a freedom from attachment and desire. This cessation occurs when the mind is purified of desires, expectations, and illusions. When we let go of the idea that lasting pleasure or security can be found in something external, we begin to experience an inner peace that is beyond external circumstances. Buddha teaches us that liberation from suffering is achieved through the practice of detachment, the renunciation of incessant desire, and the deep acceptance of the impermanence of all things. Suffering begins to lose its power over us as we learn to see life with clarity and wisdom. The fourth noble truth is the path to the cessation of suffering, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the practical part of Buddha's teachings, where he provides a clear and structured route to achieve liberation from suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path consists of 8 interconnected practices that guide individuals toward wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline. These steps should not be viewed as isolated stages, but as a continuous path, where each aspect reinforces and complements the others. The 8 principles are: right view, understanding the nature of suffering, its causes, and the possibility of its cessation. Right intention, cultivating the intention to act with compassion and wisdom, without selfishness or violence. Right speech, speaking with truth, kindness, and discernment, avoiding words that cause harm to others. Right action, acting ethically and without causing harm to others, following principles of honesty, generosity, and integrity. Right livelihood, pursuing a profession that does not cause harm to oneself or others and promotes peace and well-being. Right effort, striving to cultivate positive thoughts and eliminate negative and harmful ones. Right mindfulness, practicing mindfulness to observe thoughts, feelings, and actions with clarity. Right concentration, developing the ability for deep concentration, achieving meditative states that bring clarity and tranquility. Through the diligent practice of these principles, a person can transcend suffering and achieve liberation. The Four Noble Truths offer a way to see the world, understand our suffering, and act to overcome it. These truths tell us that suffering is universal, but they also show us how to break the cycle of suffering. Buddha lived 80 years. During the last 45 years of his life, he traveled vast regions of India, teaching his vision of suffering, freedom, and the middle path. He became a master who not only achieved enlightenment, but also taught thousands of people to do the same. He never claimed to be anything other than a man who discovered the truth about human suffering and the path to overcoming it. And through his words and practice, he invited us to follow this path. Buddha's path is, above all, a story of transformation, not of a divine being, but of an ordinary man. The human mind, regardless of its origins, conditions, or difficulties, has the potential to awaken to the truth. Like Siddhartha, we are all invited to walk this path of self-knowledge, overcoming suffering, and inner transformation. Each step toward understanding this is a step toward our own enlightenment. In his life, he showed us that enlightenment is not a distant destination, but a journey that can begin here and now. Thank you for watching.